The roll call.
Yes, I do.
Okay. For a motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Second. We have a motion second to approve the agenda. All in favor, signal by saying aye. 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 Carries. Is there any public comments?
No, sir.
Consent agenda, any questions?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, signal by saying aye. 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 Carries. Any questions on the reports? Regular agenda. Infrastructure feasibility study for West Plains mixed use development.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just thought it would be good to have agenda items from WSB count. There is some work being done regarding the old Connie's property on the west side of town. And I thought it would be good for Jen to come in. They conducted a feasibility study looking at water and sewer, how to supply infrastructure out to that location. And in your packets is a copy of the report that was presented to the city council a week or two ago. So I thought it'd be good if Jen could just go through that. Commission, but
Thank you.
So the feasibility report that's in your packet that was presented at the last council meeting, it's a draft report. It was, purpose was to discuss the assumptions that were made. Your first I do have some handouts. I know that there's some stuff on here too, but I wasn't sure what I have to present with. So I just had a few things printed out. The first one is the location of the Prentice property. It's in a red square here. They've recently annexed into the city and they have requested utilities out there to develop their property. Currently, is it okay if I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not waving my arms, I'm not comfortable. So utilities, existing utilities are currently sewer and water. Trunk sewer and water are located on 21st right here, and there's also sewer and water right here. So the developer put together a preliminary plat application that showed how they could provide utilities to their site, and that was to extend water with we do require looping for the water, so it would be to connect to the trunk main here, bring water down through their site, come back and connect to existing water over here, and that would loop the site, provide access to the utility for them. Sewer would just be they proposed doing a lift station right here and then pumping in our sewer. However, looking at our comp plan that we have for both water and for sanitary sewer, we decided that it would be best to look at the opportunity to extend trunk utilities to this site just to see who would benefit from development instead of just making this a one-off. They provide utilities to them and they serve whatever serves them and everybody else who cares. We thought it'd be beneficial for us to look at what would be needed for a trunk extension to them to see what properties would benefit. And also the purpose of the study is to look at capacities, look at limitations for pipe sizing as far as like how much can develop to serve in this trunk line. And also how does it get funded? Because I understand it is considered sort of a leapfrog situation since there are no utilities there right now. They do have to leap across. But in order to help make that happen, if we made it a trunk project, who could benefit? These properties could develop. There's interest here to get with this property to be served by sewer and water, potentially properties outside. It would just open up development. So that's how this whole thing initiated. That's what's in the report. In your packet is the draft report that just showed what the assumptions were. The council meeting at the study session that we had, we talked about assumptions for limits, like who do we want, how far out do we want to go? The water, I told Keith then I don't want to, like, water is important, but it's kind of boring because it's pressurized. So it is what it is, right? We know we need a trunk. We know we need a 12-inch through here to serve out here. We know that it's okay to loop an 8-inch back here. The big question with council is really about pipe sizing for sanitary sewer, because that's fed gravity. How deep do we make it? Do we go up to 24-inch? Who benefits from that? Who's going to pay for it? So Water's not as exciting, but it still is necessary, and we know we need a 12-inch and we need an 8-inch loop coming back. There was a question about whether we just did an 8-inch here and didn't oversize this for trunk. And I will say that some of the properties on here still have issues with fire flow, making that an 8-inch loop. So we still do, no matter what with this property developing, still want to see a 12-inch here and an 8-inch loop coming back. So the next, you want to go to the next, I don't know what's going to pop up here. So this is a big surprise. We just want to keep going down. I'm trying to get there. Here we go. This is the water. Again, this is more of a visual. I talked about this, but there wasn't a visual before. The solid line is in place. The dashed line is what is proposed. This line, just the layout, this depends. This is up to the developer. This is just showing a loop based on their current street layout that they have in here. So this will change a little bit, but this is what we're proposing is a 12-inch through here and an 8-inch coming back to connect back here. So then let's see. I don't know if you have.
What size is that dark blue?
This right here.
Of the sewer, what size is the dark blue, the sewer line going?
This is all water, and this is a 12-inch main. This is all 12-inch right here.
So
And then
what
this is
would oversize be?
the 8 to the 12. So when we look at funding this, about who benefits, since it's a trunk line, developers typically put in what they need, which would be an 8-inch main. Anything over and above would be considered a trunk cost because it's serving a larger area. So when we look at funding for this and what the developer, what would you ask the developer to pay versus what we would consider a trunk cost, it would be the difference in the cost between an 8-inch to a 12-inch.
So you said it needed 12-inch for the development just for fire? Is that what you
Right,
said?
right. Yep,
So there's no oversizing beyond 12.
correct. We don't need anything bigger than a 12-inch, correct.
So you would require the development to have a 12 regardless of
Well,
what else was happening in?
Yes and no, but all these other properties would also need to have that 12-inch. I mean, it would be a standalone. I see what you're saying, that it would still be necessary. Now, could they? They would have, I think the fire flows were 1,200 to 1,800, which I think recommended is 3,200. Is that correct? Water people? I think so. So there would be, I mean, they would maybe need a booster, a boosting that I can't, some sort of a booster inside their building to be able, it's really needed for the assistant or the senior facility that they have in here. So I understand the 12-inch is, we're saying would be needed here, but it's also needed for all of this because the 12-inch is also taking into account the other development coming into it too. So anything outside of an 8-inch, we would consider oversizing. So do you have, I think I had you add, okay, so the last handout has some orange and yellow lines on it, and it has the Pontius property in red. That's looking at our service area that we need for this.
Is this the one you want? I do have your other one.
Do you?
Okay.
I think you have to keep going.
Keep going. Nope, keep going. I think it was a separate one that I had sent Ed at the meeting. I emailed it to him.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, so it's the last sheet in your packet, or that I just handed out, and that just shows the service area that we have. You know, we looked at just the orange area, which I know the colors are very similar and the lighting's not really bright in here, so it's hard to see, but this initial orange square was what we looked at for service area. And then knowing, and this is more for sanitary sewer, to be honest, because this doesn't affect the sizing of the main. This is really for the sanitary. If we were looking to change the pipe slope at all, we could add in this yellow area. So I just wanted you to at least see like the service area that we're looking at for this. I don't know, I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this map that would matter for. So the comp plans that we have do show a very large area in Princeton Township being serviceable according to our sewer comp plan. We don't know if that's ever going to happen. So I mean, the purpose of us doing this exercise was really to look. Actually, yeah, this, you can go back. Go forward a couple pages.
Go back to,
To go, like page 42 or 40.
It's up or down, should go up a couple pages, I think.
Right here, yeah. So this was the service area planned to go into this trunk main here, and you can see this yellow, I mean, that's a very large area. And it's a, we don't know what's gonna happen, right? I mean, will this happen in 50, 100 years? Maybe so, but by then the utility will probably need replacement in itself anyways, so then that would be time to upsize. So it's really trying to find that balance about what do we need now? What do we maybe need in 20, 30 years? What do we see annexing in? If we extend this main, what properties do we see would benefit from this that may want to annex in? So I think what we ultimately decided is this is too large of an area. Let's shrink this into something a little bit more reasonable, something that we see actually happen today. So, I think you go one more page, maybe page 45. This was all sewer, yeah. Oh, here's the water, yeah, so the water did have, let me get my bearings here. The yellow line is what? I think it's a boundary.
oh,
Clear.
Yeah, the water service area, so you can see up in here that this was the water service area that was planned for this, which is pretty close to what we have in here already, so. So then we talk about funding for this. The developer has put together some preliminary costs for the development, and knowing that they do have to loop this water main, knowing they do have to get sewer, so their plan was to put the lift station in and then pump it over. Right now, we're kind of wrapping up the costs of this, because in order to fund this, we looked at assessments, we looked at it at deferred assessments. Of course, it's hard to assess property that's not part of the city, so that would be a deferred if we decided to do assessments. However, deferrals often have a time limit associated with them. They're often 20 years. Well, if any developer, may just wait 20 years, and 20 year in 1 month, they come to the city and they want to annex in, and they just waited out their assessment, and now the city's out the money to help pay for this project that they've been trying to find for their portion of paying for the project. So we are looking at an area trunk charge for this, because this isn't, all of these properties are not, except for Pontius, they're not in the city limits. So essentially, when this trunk system was put together and the trunk fee was developed, this area wasn't really taken into account because it's not part of city limits yet. So what we're looking at for this would be an additional area trunk charge for these parcels only that are identified on the map. And that would be, as they develop in, they would be paying a per acre area trunk fee to pay for their portion of this project as they develop. And there are properties that are already interested in that have expressed interest. Like I said, the church is here, this property, Hodges is in it already, obviously, so they're willing to pay. I do think extending the utility through and providing, knowing these properties have availability to connect to those utilities will open up the question as to, it'll make it more enticing for them to be interested in developing, but that's really how we're looking at funding this though. So the sewer would look at, their trunk charge would be for anything for the main coming out spread over the area. And then for the water, it would just be the cost for upsizing from 8-inch to a 12-inch for just this stretch. And that's what the cost would be spread amongst all those parcels. Are there any questions? We're in the part right now, we're trying to wrap this up, get the numbers wrapped up. I know the developer of Pontius has been asking about the rates because they're trying to get their dollars squared away also to see what they have in on this. But I think we're planning on taking it to the next council meeting. We'll hopefully have the funding portion wrapped up and we'll be ready.
City to pay for this thing? Or who are you looking at?
So
Developer, the city, or?
So the city would be running the project for extending out the payback. Now, Michelle, I might be looking to you to help answer this initially as far as all the, because I know there's two different entities in this with the sewer and the water, but the payback would be through the trunk fees. But initially,
Yeah, I mean, we still have to talk about that. I mean, there's lots of ways to handle this. You know, the city could take on the initial bonding costs or however we're gonna pay for it. I haven't even looked at the final numbers yet. And with an agreement, the utility as trunk fees are collected would then pay the city, or you guys could do your part. We just don't know yet right now. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have an answer for Keith right now, so. I think there's more discussions. I think the intent of this feasibility study was to acknowledge that we want this project to happen because it's more tax base for the city. And we also need to plan for, I mean, both the water and sewer comp plans included expansion westerly. You know, and these plans were done, at least the sewer plan was done back in the day. There was significant pie in the sky wishful thinking perhaps. And I anticipate that at least the sewer plan will be reworked given Baldwin becoming its own entity. So those assumptions need to be reworked. As a staff, we recommend to the council that we scale back the westerly extension and also look at some of the other physical constraints. You know, the west branch of the Rum River runs parallel to and north of 95. So how much does it really make sense to, you know, how much can we pick up north of 95 without putting the city into some significant financial investments going forward? How much west can we travel, given private acquisition of lands that were part of the 1,000-acre development that's probably never going to develop if Mr. Anderson has his desires met. So, I mean, at this point, this is just a step in, it's just one step down this road to be traveled. And as Jen said, she's still working the numbers, and we still have to look at the numbers and look at the different ways we can fund this and come up with some type of cooperative agreement, so.
I think the purpose of going through this exercise that I want to stress is that I think the city did not want this to be a standalone project. Where this guy just does whatever serves him, knowing that once utilities are there, there's going to be others that are going to be interested in having a discussion to develop. So it's kind of all right, do we do what is needed tomorrow, or do we look at doing what's needed for the future? Because if we just do the simple work to just let him do a standalone project, then we're leaving these guys and, you know, other nearby properties out of the opportunity of ever being able to develop without a significant cost of doing another utility down to them, another extension. So.
Basically, you don't want to be short-sighted.
Long-term, we don't want to be short-sighted. Yep. While we're in there doing the work, what can we do to maximize it at the dollar amount that makes the most sense for what we predict may happen for development? I think we all agree that that service area that was shown is probably never going to happen. Probably.
Yeah, I'll do one of the important. Realistically, the area of what it really is, which is the whole property for the most part. The church and those residential there, and you know, they're probably gonna be coming in, I would think, sooner than later, more than likely. And we already do have the next, some of that property to the south are the lots from 21st West there, yeah. You know, that's all been next,
This has,
yeah.
Yeah.
What was that hasn't been. Yeah, but there's still potential there. With existing structure.
Is there a house on that property where the mouse is now?
There is one there. Oh, yeah, it is.
Is that part of this property?
yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's close.
I think those two separate.
Are these two separate?
Yeah, the one you just pointed at is not, the one to the right. Where you just pointed, The house. Yep, there's that Rich and Ann Bean's house. If you go to the right.
Right there,
Right there, that's another house. That's the one that just came in.
the doctor.
So is that a bunch of open land there? Is that Sol's property?
You know,
just.
Yeah.
There?
That's-
40 that's in the city, which is right there, and then roughly 30 that is not in the city.
So that first 40 is already,
And
Correct.
how about south of there to the left? Right there,
that is out of the city.
is that one open parcel or is there a house there?
There is a house, but it's a pretty big, it's a
I
pretty.
think it's somebody else. I think it's a development company's got that piece.
I would guess that if a development company has it, they're just waiting for utilities to come through.
Oh, there, so existing structures in there already would potentially be coming on there, what the very active over the bill. We don't know that.
Is that new building that was just built the last year? Is that city sewer?
Which
Down here?
No, right where the mouse is kind of there.
Brinks, no, it was not.
Brinks. They have the, what is their sewer system? Yeah. Sewer system.
It's Midgemont Properties that owns that one there. And it's not the same as the house.
I and
Yeah. No, we weren't looking for any, because, make sure that you guys are.
CIF adjustments, let's look at tree.
Yeah, so, in your packets, memo 24-23, wanted to point out to the commission, in regards to the status of our capital improvements fund. For background, I did include a copy of the commission's policy regarding the CIF. Those balances as of the end of September was, we had just over 1.4 million in electric, and just under 1.4 million in water. The way, staff has been directed in terms of utilizing the CIF was anytime we collect fees for, construction, some fees, connection fees, as well as interest on CDs. Do I have all those right, Cap? All of those are directed to go into the CIF fund. So the CIF fund does grow from month to month. Again, under commission policy, the CIF is capped at $1.5 million. So we're going to be hitting that limit here in a short period of time. Staff have been looking at that in conjunction with the 2025 budget, as well as our long-term capital needs as we work on the electric cap plan, in addition to some of the construction projects that we're working on the water side. As a result, staff was thinking that the their approach would be to increase the SIP limits from 1.5 to $2 million. This is a new topic, so I'm more just wanted to present it to the commission and get your thoughts on it. A decision doesn't have to be made today. It is something that the commission can talk and think about. But I did want to make sure that we pointed out that we're going to be hitting that limit. We do have some large capital expenditures coming up in the next 5 years. So having a little bit of money now to prevent future, or at least minimize future rate increases, would be, in staff's opinion, a prudent strategy. Looking for some information from the commission as to what you think regarding the CIF.
I think, I have to agree, I think it makes sense to increase it a little bit, especially if you foresee some major expenses coming up in the future, so.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, and then, although, everything is a lot more today than it did 10, 15 years, whenever this was established, so.
Yeah, the current limits were set in 2012. So it has been,
You did that with different, be done periodically, it'll do it.
Yeah, I'm okay with, making a decision today if he was out.
yeah, we're happy to take it. I just wanted to make sure the commission had time to think about it. If there were any concerns.
The only change would be the dollar.
Correct,
Just to 2 million,
correct.
the staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Into the motion.
I'll make the motion to increase the legal fee I have to 2 million, from 1.5 to 2 million.
Yep, for both funds, for both electric and water.
Okay, for
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to increase the capital improvement fund for both water and electric to $2 million. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. ECA modification proposal.
Yes, Mr. Chair, something else I wanted to bring to the attention of the commission. Again, as staff have been working through budgets and fees for 2025. We reevaluated, or perhaps a better word is, we've just gone back and looked at how the ECA has performed over the last 18 months. Just a reminder, the SIPA had implemented an ECA in 2023. The decision was made at that time to just simply pass through that ECA to customers because they didn't know how this was going to work out. It's been a bit of a learning experience for us and for SIPA for that matter. Again, in the background, I included what the current commission policy is regarding the rate stabilization account because I think that has will have some relevance to the discussion. And currently, the rate stabilization account has a balance of 1.3 million. So SIPA began implementing their ECA in March of 2023, which was an adjustment on the wholesale bill. One of the things, although SIPA was budgeting the ECA to be a net zero, one of the things that they did do in their original structure was to calculate the ECA as an annual average, knowing that there are month-to-month variations due to, I'll just use the word seasonality variation, which causes the ECA to sometimes be either a positive or negative right out of the gate. And what that did, particularly for this year, is because of how the wholesale markets are structured, SIPA created an ECA in which they knew that there would be ECA charges in the first half of the year, and then ECA charges or ECA credits in the second half of the year. So in essence, what they are doing is collecting money in the beginning just to give it back at the end of the year, which to me creates a little bit of volatility in rates that I think as a utility we can help cover. I did provide in the memo a summary of how that ECA has varied. So you'll see in 2023, it varied from anywhere from a charge, and this is in total for all of our customers, of a charge of $33,000 to a credit of $42,000. The 2023 net, after everything was said and done, was it finished the year with a charge of $26,000. So far for this year, the max monthly ECA charge has been about $48,000, and the max ECA credit has been just over $11,000. We're currently sitting at a net of an extra $100,000 that has been passed on to customers. Again, the way SIPA has their ECA designed, the remaining months of this year should all be credits if everything goes according to budget. So a lot of that money goes back. But what that ultimately, you can see what that means is we're seeing a month-to-month variation of under $50,000 with a net of about $100,000. Wanted to point out that that's kind of the reason why the rate stabilization account was created in the first place, was to handle that kind of variability. So staff were thinking, understanding that the rate stabilization account is there to help with some rate stabilization, hence the name, but also understanding that some of that rate stabilization money under the rate study that AGR did for us a couple of years ago was assumed to be put into the cap plan. Don't want to completely put the rate stabilization at risk. That balance is anticipated to be used for some capital investments. However, I do think it would be a benefit to our customers to handle some of that variability. So the thought is, rather than doing a direct pass-through of the ECA from SIPA to our customers, that the utility just take on that risk using the funds transfer from the rate stabilization account to cover that variation. And as long as we monitor, to make sure it doesn't get too out of whack, that should everything should match up at that case. It does mean that we probably want to bump up the rate stabilization limit from 1.5 million to about 1.75 million. Again, because of some handle that variation. But at the end of the day, I think what that means is our customers won't be seeing the month-to-month variation in their bills caused by how simple it is structuring their ECA process. So in essence, one of the recommendations staff was thinking of breaking this down into 3 recommendations. Again, we're anticipating some credits coming back from what has been basically prepaid earlier this year. Let's just finish out the year as the program is currently structured. But then effective January 1st, restructure the ECA to leverage the rate stabilization fund and protect our customers from this wholesale price volatility that we're seeing from SIMPA. Since the maximum that we're seeing month to month is under $50,000 and the year-to-date impact is about $100,000, that should be handled well within the rate stabilization account. And if it gets more than that, then we can come to the commission with some direction. Since the rate stabilization fund was anticipated to provide resources for phase 3 of the cap plan, we could be leveraging some of our CIF to help pay for that. So we do have some flexibility. The commission does have some flexibility in the years to come on how we want to pay for that. But given that the current balance of the rate stabilization fund is at 1.3 million, and we don't know what next year is going to be in terms of credits or charges, it would seem to make sense to bump that up a little bit and preserve that principle. So increase the rate stabilization account to 1.7 million to handle that volatility and potential cost. So we can maintain a balance. So when we get into phase 3 of the electric cap plan, we can leverage those dollars again to minimize any future rate impacts. So that would require a change to the current commission policy on rate stabilization to increase the upper limit from 1.5 million to 1.75 million. The other thing I wanted to point out, just so the commission is aware, SIMPA has given some indication that it is possible that members may be eligible for a cash distribution in 2025. We have gotten some cash distributions from SIMPA over the years. The way they have things structured, and it's through a financial transmission right that they own. It gets into the MISO wholesale market. It's pretty complicated. But basically, if SIMPA gets back some of the credits from MISO that they're anticipating, that would get passed through to the members. In the event that that happens, SIMPA would most likely issue that through their ECA. Again, I think that would be an opportunity for us to take that money to use it for the phase 3 of the cap plan and mitigate those rating increases that we were planning on at that time. We're looking at, I think, my rough calculations is we're kind of looking between $70,000 and $80,000 in that cash contribution. So not a whole lot, but it does account for almost a 1%, about a 1% rate impact on our customers. So if that were the case, and that comes through the ECA, we would like to earmark that for the CIF, which the commission just allowed us to increase that limit on that. So we could earmark that money for phase 3. So there's 3 parts to it. They kind of all go together. Again, it's a complicated and yet nuanced issue. I think it has the potential for preserving the financial strength of the utility and really mitigating future rate impact for our customers. So I did want to put it out there as a proposal for you to discuss, and I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have. Again, I apologize, it's complicated, I couldn't find a really easy way to explain each step in it, but, I mean, the intention was to try to mitigate those future rate impacts. I'm available for any questions.
Well, any action that have that goal, I guess. For the purpose in mind, is certainly a good one, I think. But we have to look out for first, the government. My opinion.
No, I'm still trying to absorb it.
Yeah.
No action is needed on this either. Again, even if the commission agreed with all this, it wouldn't go into effect until January 1st anyway, so it's not a rush.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correct or find out. So the rate stabilization fund, we've only used maybe 50 to 100,000.
We haven't used any of it.
We haven't used any.
Right now, we're passing through the Sunbeam ECA at 100%.
And so the purpose of increasing that?
Because we're right near, we're getting close to that limit.
Mhm.
If we go into next year and also we get a whole bunch of credits, we would be hitting that limit. It's because
The
of
upper
like,
limit.
huh?
The upper limit.
Correct.
So then if you were to hit that upper limit, then what happens?
We can't put it into the rate stabilization account. It would have to go in cash.
You have to go into cash, you can't go into the capital improvement fund.
Not without the commission directing us to.
Because if we're not using the money, and we haven't been,
Yeah.
do we need that much in there?
And that's a valid point. I mean, you're correct. Staff would just need direction to say, if the rate, if we implement the strategy and not pass through the ECA, but the utility tries to buffer that for our customers. If the rate stabilization account hits the limit, where do you want us to put them? And yes, it can absolutely go into the CI.
Because we're a not-for-profit,
Right.
so, I mean, but yeah, we do have capital improvements coming up, but,
Correct.
which I don't want to raise rates or do bonding if we don't have to, if we got the cash.
Yeah.
Um,
So yes, that's a perfectly,
So what would be the purpose of raising it then if we raising that?
I was just thinking of it to keep it contained so that the ECA is completely handled by the rate stabilization account and then that just fluctuates. But if the commission said that you didn't want the cap to go any higher, we just need directions to what to do if we hit a level. And right now, we don't have any direction on that.
The city would like some more money.
Huh? I think one more little nuance to point out, though. The rate stabilization account is a deferred revenue account, which means if we get an ECA credit and we put money into the rate stabilization, we don't count that as income until it comes out. It's just how it was structured.
So,
The CIF,
just an account.
yeah, if you recall at the end of last year when we were looking at the audit, we had moved some money into rate stabilization, not understanding the deferment of the revenue and how that impacted the income statement. So again, this comes down to a little bit more of a financial strategy philosophy of the commission. If we put it in the rate stabilization, it's a deferred revenue, which means we don't count it until we take it out and use it. If we put it into the CIF, we're counting the revenue in that year. I don't know that it makes any difference,
If we
really.
put it in there, we're not counting it, or we are counting
If we put it into the rate stabilization, we're not counting, it's deferred. If we put it in the CIF, we're
it?
counting it.
What benefit would that have to the utility?
That's getting a little bit beyond me. At this point where the RCA is close to being fully funded, I'm not sure what benefit there would be to continue to defer that. So if particularly if this cash distribution happened if the commission wanted to direct that money to the CIF instead of the RCA.
Well, during COVID, we were, we didn't use it, but simply used their rate stabilization, right? Or they were going to,
Yes.
or did they? I remember.
They burned up a lot of their cash reserves.
But we never had to get into our,
No,
have we ever had to use it?
yes, we had been using it for years. It was slowly growing, but we were netting out. We were actually doing some internal ECA calculations. To me, it just, I didn't see the need in it. We weren't seeing the variation that much. We were slowly growing it. Here, if we're targeting to specifically offset a cost coming in from our wholesale collective effort, that would seem to me to be a good use of the money and protect our rate.
Because as a ratepayer, we really kind of have a double protection layer then, really, which I didn't really realize until I found out Simply had their rate stabilization fund also.
Correct.
And then we had.
Correct.
That's the principal utility.
Yeah. And to recap, the reason why SIPA started an ECA last year was because, like you pointed out, there was a huge increase in wholesale costs, which we didn't pass through to the customer. I should say SIPA didn't pass through to its members. And they burned up a lot of their internal cash reserves. So then the board had a decision to make. Do we rebuild those cash reserves? Or they were given the option by their financial consultants that if they created an ECA, there was no reason for them to keep large cash reserve balances. Because the risk was lower for them in case there were wild market swings, because now they had a mechanism to pass that through to the members. So that's, the ECA was set up to, if the ECA hadn't happened, SIPA was looking at a much larger rate increase because they'd have to build their cash reserve back up in case that volatility ever came back. So it was a financial integrity issue. And what I'm suggesting is we have a rate stabilization account. The variations that we're seeing, I think the rate stabilization account could handle that and give our customers a little bit more pricing than what they've had in the last week. And again, if it grows to something, say, way more significant, say instead of 100,000, we're talking 250,000. Well, then we can come back to the commission and say, hey, we might need to implement maybe not 100% ECA pass through, but 50%, or, we keep tweaking this to make sure that everybody stays as whole as possible. But at this time, I think the rate stabilization, because we're sitting at about 1.3 million, I think the rate stabilization account could provide this benefit for me.
Question. Okay.
Yeah.
On that rates on that account, if you essentially do a steady price or you eliminate that for the customers, that account's gonna see a lot more fluctuation.
Correct.
And that's where maybe it's a more room in that account would be beneficial to help that build up in the spring, and it sounds like it's gonna get hit hard in the fall type of deal.
Yeah, or vice versa,
Whichever way.
that's why we're-
That's been one thing, you turn the TV on today, all you hear about is utility costs that are up 30–40%, and we haven't experienced that here. So this is part of that, keeping us isolated from that. That's just our navigator. You implement programs.
It's just hard to wrap your head around the lives and the cause and effect.
Well, we can tell our people, well, ours have not gone up 30% or 40%, or when you turn the TV on, that's all you hear. And then where is it? Not here.
Well, yeah, I agree, we need to have fun, we need to keep it, but then, part of me is like, we've never used it, so, which is good.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, but then,
And that's why I was thinking it could be used for this.
Yeah.
To pay for the SIPA ECA. and have us not pass that through to the customers.
Right.
And then to your point, if at some point, say SIPA over the next 3 years is consistently over budgeting and the ECA becomes a credit and this thing grows, well, then at that time, you should go back, you know, if we've got the capital spend covered. My guess is that the rate stabilization fund, it will vary now. And you'll see a lot more swings in your cash, the cash reserve reports that you guys get. The rate stabilization is in there, so you will see that change from month to month. By plus or minus $50,000 the way historically this has gone. If that starts to if it starts to trend one direction or the other, then that's an opportunity for the commission to say, okay, what do we want to do? Either if it's trending down, we need to preserve that principle, so we should pass through at least a nominal ECA, maybe not the full amount, but something to where at least it's building, it maintains a good average. Or if it's trending to consistently grow, vice versa, maybe we pass through some credits. It does open up the opportunity for the commission to be a little bit more nimble, given what our financial situation is. So just like some co-ops might do a, cash back and, at a certain point in the year, it would be an opportunity for the commission to do something similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's a feel good to get $8 check or something, whatever I get from special or whatever,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that. Not sure that I think good stable rates are serve the ratepayers for the long run better than an $8 refund.
Yeah.
Go that far, if people understand that it's next to.
Yeah,
Because they see the TV and then, well, yeah, our electricity is going, well, if yours is not. And it had,
yeah, I think, I mean, as a ratepayer, I'd rather just keep my rates low and.
keep them consistent, and they're bound to increase this here and there, that's it.
If it was like, skip a whole electric bill for a month, then it might be a different scenario where people would be like, oh, hey, that could really help me out, but.
Yeah.
Usually, couple cups of coffee at Caribou is not gonna change most people's lives even for the better, but then. But, yeah, it is a lot, I don't know,
I'm catching on.
I feel like takes about 6 years of this, to understand what that is.
Well, this is a completely different way of thinking about.
Yeah.
What we've done,
Right.
but I wanted to provide it as an option to the commission.
You don't need any action on this. too.
I would prefer that you guys sleep on it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
Have
it.
some conversations, maybe one-on-one,
Yeah,
with you understanding we're a bit more in depth,
absolutely.
just to make sure that we understand what we're making a motion.
Yeah. And I can do some more historical analysis as well and send that out as background to the commission.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see where the numbers.
I want to look at it more and make sure that I'm not missing something.
Absolutely. I just appreciate the consideration.
Okay, so then, the proposed 2025 fee schedule, Mr. Butcher.
Yeah, so in your packets, memorandum 24-25. Again, let me, back up for a second. The general process that we've been following is that staff will provide a proposal for the next year's fee, and budgets to the commission in October. And that's more to introduce the ideas, give the commission an opportunity to, read through it, think about it. If there's additional background information that would be helpful to let staff know. Bring it back in front of the commission in November. Again, if there are questions, the commission can talk through those, try to get on the same page. Or if there's additional information needed at that time, direct staff to do that research, ultimately to have a decision in place by December. So what I'm going to go through is just staff's initial proposal, and see if there's any initial questions that the commission might have. Again, not looking for a decision, but it's just the numbers that staff have come up with. The first memo that we're going to talk about, 24-25, is on the fee schedule. You'll see what I tried to do is provide a side-by-side between what our current fee schedule is that was effective in May of this year versus what would become effective January 1st of next year. A lot of the numbers, actually, we don't vary too much. A couple of numbers that we have increased based off of what we've seen a lot of our peers do. A lot of it has to do with on the construction side. Again, we continue to see material prices go up as well as labor and equipment. So again, actually, a lot of that is meant to just mirror what our peers are doing in that area. So I guess
we were voting on this in November.
the suggestion is to do November at the earliest, otherwise do it in December, depending on what questions they have. So I wasn't going to go through it line by line unless the commission wants me to. Again, I put everything side by side so that you guys can take a look.
Yeah.
But otherwise, what you're seeing is staff's initial recommendation. There might be some minor tweaks that we put on it in November, but if so, we'll highlight those at that time. Unless there's any initial questions, I'll leave the fee schedule as it is. And then, yeah, we're available for questions.
And I would like to, if no one has any questions, then we're or to just get things done.
Right. No.
Not today, but.
No, because there's one or two line items I still want to
Yeah.
verify.
But if staff's comfortable with it, the commission is comfortable with it.
Okay.
So we're kicking it down there.
Did a couple of minor changes, and they highlight that whatever changes you make would be the one that on highlight, I suppose.
Yeah,
I can do that.
yeah, I was gonna ask them too. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So proposed 2025 budget.
Yeah, so, again, same thing, the intent here today is to simply, introduce a proposed budget, highlight, some of the key drivers that, that we've learned this year and as we move forward, what adjustments we see might make sense. Let's start off with, in the memo, I did include, a year-to-date, for the commission, so that you can see both on electric and water, where revenues, expenses, and a net income for both budgeted versus actual. What you see for the variance, and I tried to make it pretty easy. I color coded it for you, so green is good, red is bad.
I was surprised that water.
Yeah, I think I am too. I'm actually.
How wet it was this spring. So.
Yeah, I was actually more surprised that electric wasn't under. Because I was expecting those revenues to be the actual to be less than budget. I think what has happened in a lot of cases is we've just had some customers come in. There's been, construction going on. So we sell a lot through the hydrant. We sell some through the hydrant to road construction folks. But then when we look at Glendale coming in, look at the Briggs properties becoming fully occupied. The city is doing a lot of good work in terms of economic development and utilizing infill and getting stuff usable. And I think we're seeing the results of that. So I agree. We were trending earlier this year with revenues being down in both utilities. And what we've seen over the last few months is really that kind of bouncing back a little bit. Now, we're heading into winter, so things are going to drop off again here pretty quick. But generally speaking, in looking at our year-to-dates, we're sitting very well. Very well.
That selling water on the hydrant has been a huge beneficial offset because watering, between person, I hardly ran my sprinkler all winter. And then among the others did the same thing. But selling water through the hydrant probably offset some. When I sit over here, parks and they're stuck there all the time, fill them up.
So I think all those play into it.
Maybe because we started buying water. I shut the sprinklers off at home, no, it's not really. My bill went way down. One of the biggest revenue in the water bill. No, but yeah, I was really surprised by that number, because that was one I thought, for
Yeah.
sure, well, that's gonna take a little bit, to get to the wettest spring or,
Yeah.
record or one.
Well, and I will say this too, in terms of what I put in the budget, I try to be a little bit more conservative. So that if we have a down year, it doesn't, it's not such a big hit to our cash reserves. I'd rather err a little bit on assuming a little bit less in sales than assuming too much, and then we have a problem by Q3. So part of it might be in that too, it's just my natural inclination to err on a lower revenue side. And in years like this, it really pays off. Whereas if you look at 2023, all of our revenues were pretty, they were well above budget. So it kind of comes down to your budgeting philosophy. So I'm sure that played a role as well. So a couple of major assumptions and key changes that I wanted to mention for next year. Given a couple of things that are going on in regards to the cap plan expenditures, as well as the increased revenues we're seeing because of business expansions within town, was initially proposing a reallocation of our costs, which would actually result in an overall electric rate decrease of 0.73%. But we would be looking at increasing residential rates 1%, small general service keep the same, large general service a decrease of 2.4%, the intermediate power rate decrease of 1.9%, and the large power service decrease of 1.8%. Again, that reallocation is due to two main factors. One is the residential increase is due to the capital plan expenditures, which have been almost exclusively in the residential neighborhoods. This is the undergrounding and the getting rid of the voltage, new voltage upgrades. We've done a lot of work east of the river, north of 95, and kind of that area, very residential areas. So they're the ones benefiting from those expenditures. The rate study did project a 1% rate increase for 2025, so that matches with the original DGR plan. The CNI decreases, we have seen an increase in revenues, mostly because Glen Meadow has come online this year. So the cost to serve the CNI, the commercial industrial class, hasn't changed. We haven't had to hire anybody because of that, but we've seen higher revenues, so that results in a decrease in the rates on that side of it. Again, water continues to move forward very well, so no changes to those. And then a 4% COLA, as well as some other adjustments to salaries to remain competitive in the marketplace. So then what I've provided is two tables, one for electric, one for water, that looks at the revenues by class, as well as other operating revenue, expenses by the different departments, the non-operating revenue, non-operating expense, depreciation, and then I added in some capitalized assets expenses so that we could get, it's not a true cash flow analysis because I'm not including inventory, things like that. So don't read too much into that number. It's just meant to be more of a placeholder. I provided the commission with a table showing what those variations are in relation to the 2024 budget. And then on the electric side, included an additional column to show where the rate study assumptions had us being at that stage. So you kind of see that the rate study was assuming a little bit more revenues than what I'm assuming. However, the rate study also assumed more expenses than what we've actually experienced. So those all pretty much balanced out so that overall we're doing slightly better than what the rate study projections were. So I feel very comfortable with that. One of the biggest change that you'll see in here, if I look at electric, the reason the revenue on the IPS, the intermediate power service, goes up so much is simply because that was a new rate. And so we were still trying to get a good estimate for that. So that's more of a function of us, of that restructuring of the rate schedules that we did a year ago. The other big increase is in the non-operating revenue. And the reason for that is because Kathy has set up a CD ladder for us, which we didn't have in the past. And with the interest rates being around 5%, when we were getting 0.1%, that's where we're seeing the significant increase in non-operating revenues because of the interest rates that we're currently experiencing. So we've been able to leverage that on behalf of our customers as well. And then on the water side, again, not too much of a variation in much of anything. So we're continuing to show a positive net income there. The only thing that really changed that I wanted to know is under the non-operating expense. You can't see it in these numbers, but we are paying off more and more of the bonds. So our interest payments on the water bonds is going down significantly next year, which is why we're able to still project a positive net income with no rate changes there as well. And then I'll go through the third table that I have here that I'm available to answer questions. Looking at major projects for next year, we want to make sure that we're continuing investing in our system so that we don't use it up and keep a strong utility for the future. Did want to mention several big projects that we're anticipating for next year. One is the civic systems upgrade, which was approved at the August commission meeting for $51,000. On the IT side, we're looking at we do need to update the SQL for the UConn server software and the licenses, as well as adding some RAM and a hard drive for the DC server. So just some IT investments we need to make there. I did earmark some money for a potential office-based feasibility study. The city may be looking at something like that. So if there's an opportunity for a joint project there, that would seem to make sense. We are in the SIMPA O&M budget to replace the power plant windows. Even though that doesn't cost us anything because it's covered under the SIMPA O&M budget, I just wanted to put those in there just so that you're aware of the activity, because it would take staff time to be able to do that. We are moving forward on the PFAS mitigation plan through Bolton Bank for $75,000. That was approved at the September commission meeting. Given the presentation earlier with Jen and conversations that Michelle and I have had, it would seem to be prudent to do a water and sewer rate study next year and reevaluate not just rates, but the connection fees and the trunk fees, and do all that at once. That hasn't been done in quite a long time. And with some of these new potential developments coming in, it would make sense to potentially look at that. Again, I see that as a joint effort with the city because the sewer revenues are all based off of water consumption anyway, and how the sewer rates are calculated. So both of us working on that together, I think there's some economies of scale. Looking at some upgrades to some new customers for some infrastructure improvements. I wanted to earmark some money in the budget for that. That is in the budget, not as a capital expense. That's why it's proposed at zero, because I have that in the budget itself. Again, I thought it was important for the commission to know. Potentially upgrading the back trailer. That is a piece of equipment that would be used by both water and electric utilities. Those two can speak better to that than I can. We're hoping we can find a good used one for about 125. A new one costs about 160. So we'll do everything we can to find something reasonable there. But we wanted to put a placeholder in for that. Really feel it's necessary to do some tuck pointing for both the potato warehouse as well as the office building. Our buildings are showing their age, I guess would be a way to say it. I know that the commission wanted to put off doing a space feasibility study until we have a little bit better understanding of service territory issues. In the meantime, though, I think it is worthwhile to put some money into that. We noticed the rainstorms in the basement. We've got water coming through, so doing some preservation there, I think would be prudent. An addition of a lawnmower to help with, getting our different lots, maintaining those. The North Tower reconditioning project, which has already been presented to the commission, and we're working with KLM on putting that together. That, obviously, when we get to that portion of the project, whether that's paid through with a CIF or bond is something that the commission hasn't decided upon yet. I'm waiting on some numbers for that. But that would be a major project next year. It is time for us to update, to redo some of our transformers. Looking at the oil in the transformers, and we have 8 that we are looking at. If I remember correctly. So this would be at the north sub, the south sub, and the plant sub. In addition to the main transformers, it's also the step-up transformers, which is why it's 8, not 3. Those haven't been done in, what, 5 or 7 years?
Yeah, it's been, I think, close to 7 years.
And so that's something that,
And that's an insurance company driver too.
yeah,
You know, is the reason we have to do that, other than the maintenance issue, but yeah.
what that is meant to be is to make sure that we identify potential outgassing early on, and not risk the transformer later. Which
Watch YouTube.
So I did put money in for that as well. And then, we do have our Unit 7 warranty renewal, coming due. That's a 5-year renewal process. Last time it cost us about $100,000 with Ziegler, Caterpillar Ziegler, for Unit 7. I have reached out to Caterpillar on that, and so I anticipate working with them on a quote, to determine if another 5-year warranty, for one, is available. I don't know if Caterpillar's gonna do it. Some of their literature says that they'll warranty up to 25 years. Guess what, we're about 25 now at this point.
It was here when I got here,
Yeah,
and I've been here, I started in 03, and it had come just before that.
yeah. So we might not, Caterpillar might not even want to warranty a unit that is that old at this point, in which case, I have a feeling the staff's recommendation would be, we need to start putting money away, in case we have a catastrophic failure on that unit, because we've had some issues, over the years. That portion were covered under warranty, but resulted in Ziegler staff coming up and spending days and disassembling units and doing significant work, which I'm sure would have been expensive had we not had to work.
Yeah, I believe it was a couple of years, it was a good investment.
Yeah.
Yes, here for sure.
So that's still a bit of a question mark as to what kind of proposal we'll get, but I put it in here at some place in Woburn as well.
I mean, if the one warranties it, no warranties it, there's nothing you can do about that except for it's the self-insure.
Correct. So that's really what I was going to go through here today, unless there are any questions from the commission. Those are the initial thoughts of staff for next year.
Questions on that?
No.
What would George say about that $125,000 back truck?
Everything keeps going underground, and we did go to the medium-sized one there and kind of determined that a bigger one for as much as it's getting used and as often as they're getting used, it's there's so much stuff in the ground now.
Right there.
No, and it's just one of those things where, you know, it gets used more and more every week. And it's,
The problem is the right of ways are getting filled up, not just with water and electric, but with telecom.
yes,
And natural gas. I mean, it's getting to be much more precise work than it was.
well, part of the problem is too, is everybody starts going deeper. You know, the telephone and everything's at 3 feet or 3 feet, so then we come through at 5. Well, then he comes in at 7 or 8, and then it's going this way and it's hard.
And
to dig
every
an
time everybody
8-foot
crosses
hole.
each other, they keep going underneath and getting tough. No,
No, it's getting to the point now, some of them alleys that Castor John got through, it's amazing that they haven't hit way more stuff. And the water projects and the force mains and stuff, when you go look at that, some of them alleys, and it's nothing but orange and yellow flags. You know, a 12-foot alley in there, you can't hardly see the alley or the green grass with all the paint. It's amazing that they can even get through there, so.
So, yeah, we're just right to the point where we just need more precise tools.
Yeah, sure, background. Oh, do we have much?
Everything east of town is on the new line. We gotta set one pole for a street light at the bowling alley, hopefully tomorrow. But otherwise, everybody out there has been converted over. So that's gonna be our projects for this winter, is tearing that all down. So,
What do you think is the first time there? Overhead.
I'm,
Where at, right?
I would say we're over 50% underground easily. Maybe 65%, because there's still quite a significant amount up on the north end. South of First Street, it's just basically like old 18 right around the hockey rink there. Plastics in that area and a little bit right kind of around the south, otherwise everything else for the main distribution feeders and stuff like that. I mean, there's still quite a few aerial services on the south end of town, overhead services come from the pole into the house, but otherwise, I'd say by the end of phase one, it's gonna be significant. Be like 75-25 maybe, and there's some just right up here, but in phase two, but phase one's gonna be, well, it'll be everything the east side of Rum River Drive. Once that gets all converted, that's all in, and, you know, we're finishing up a little bit by the roundabout, like I said in my report, but in the timeline, but otherwise it's been going really well, but
What's, Michelle, do you know what's the plan is for the old bus garage? Have you heard anything? No, that's the company that's building the new one, right? That's.
Craig Palmer Bus leases that space.
Oh, they're just leasing it. Oh,
Yeah, they don't know it. So I have no idea what's going on.
Families. It was.
No, they sold it to, their group. Bus company was in there prior to,
Yeah,
Holt.
just leasing.
like Peterson Bus Company. They were there for a couple of things, but that's a group ownership. They kept going kind of their diet of spokesperson.
So,
I don't know, I haven't talked to them in ages, I think.
it says Peterson bus on the map.
They bought it from one. They've been leasing it, that's not a Minnesota Central lease, that's in now all on the lease. I believe that's a group of something, 5 people, a group. So it wasn't doing.
anyhow, that was, sorry, on topic. Yes, that's.
So I had a thought too, and I think it's like if, all the lines and poles and stuff that we're taking down. They're not getting, because that's a little plan, right? That's something we're doing,
Right.
that going okay.
It seems to be, some of it still has communication on it, phone, cable TV. So we're gonna go like 2 feet above them and. You know,
Just hand it off.
yeah,
Get recycled, don't know or something.
we drop it out. There's a guy out here in Meadowview that said we could throw it in his yard.
So if there's communications on there, do you have to remove it so you can take the poles out or?
No, they're leasing the poles from us.
Oh,
So, yeah, so our intent is to not to just hand it over to them.
Yeah, we just say it's yours.
Could we sell them the poles?
So if a windstorm comes through, we're not out there
Correct.
doing all that, because that could be, yeah.
It would be just poles that we had anything on it. We had a street light on it or something, you know, and then they're still leasing that pole from us, so there will be some leased poles when we get completely done with this, just because of that, but what are we at, 800
I think so.
right now? So I mean, it'll be significantly less than that.
Well, how much lease do we get for a pole?
$5 a pole,
I was gonna say 650 or.
$5 to $7,
Per year?
yep, per pole.
People love it.
Yep, yep.
But yeah, if you had to replace one, that would take years to.
Well, that's just it. That's why we don't want to continue to lease them to us, to them.
Yeah, hard years to get.
Yeah.
As much as you guys cost to go out there.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion second to adjourn, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.